Anthony Castrovince has his thoughts on some current players who are Cooperstown worthy. Anthony, good morning to you. Let's talk about the guys who you've identified as locks for Cooperstown, who are still among the active playing baseball.
Well, like everything else, some people might disagree with this list, but I've got 7 stone cold locks in my mind. Mike Trout is entering his 10th season, so he'll be eligible after this year. You can just hang him up after this season and then walk right in. Albert Pujols, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Miguel Cabrera is approaching, 3,000 hits, 500 home runs. He can waltz right in. On the pitching side, you got to sometimes recalibrate your brain as to what a starting pitching Hall of Famer is in this era versus other eras. But I think we can all agree on Clayton Kershaw, 3 Cy Youngs, Max Scherzer, same there. Verlander just won his 2nd Cy Young. So, those guys all have pedigree. I think the one guy who's maybe a little more iffy on this list, probably for other people more than me, is Zach Greinke. But I don't think you can tell the story of starting pitching in this generation without Zach Greinke, quite frankly. I think he's, since he became a full-time starter in 2008, he's got the 3rd best ERA in baseball. Obviously a well-decorated player with the Cy Young and several top 5 finishes. So he's in for me. I don't know. How do you guys feel?
Anthony, it's interesting. Yes, that was the one guy on the list that I wasn't sure was a lock. But also, do you play into that he is going to age a little bit like Greg Maddux, a guy that has such great baseball intelligence. He's going to be good for many years to come.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. I mean, a couple of years ago, I obviously wouldn't have Greinke on my lock list. I'd have him certainly in good position. But yeah, the way he's responded the last couple of years, in particular, to a decline in velocity and still maintain his great effectiveness, I think says a lot. So yeah, for me, I think he's one of those guys where maybe some people who are scratching their heads now when I say that will look back on things and look at this era in total. Because again, I think there has to be some kind of recalibration. You can't just go to the tried and true numbers in terms of wins and innings and strikeouts and that sort of thing. And Greinke's obviously not a high strikeout guy. He gets it done a different way. But I think there's going to be not that there's not an appreciation for him now, but I think there's going to be a Hall of Fame appreciation for him when all is said and done.
All right, let's talk about, so those are the locks. Let's talk about the guys who they stand a very good chance for Cooperstown.
All right, so I put just a few guys on this list, and first from the catching perspective. Again, I said with Greinke, you can't tell the story of pitching without him. You can't tell the story of catching in this generation without Yadi Molina and Buster Posey, and obviously the postseason. Very well decorated from a postseason standpoint.
There's a lot of good-looking dudes in baseball.
Well, there are, Harold, and hopefully you'll be calling these guys one day to give them the good news. And then Joey Votto, from the hitting side, maybe the best pure hitter of his generation. So, those guys, I don't think there's a stone cold lock case for them right now. I don't know if there's enough accumulation with their numbers, but again, it might be one of those where we look back, 5 years after they're done playing and say, those were the 2 best catchers of their generation. That was the best pure hitter of his generation, and they get in that way. And there's a lot of guys on the bubble beyond them. Robinson Cano has the PED transgression. Otherwise, I would put him in that category for sure. Corey Kluber's won a couple Cy Youngs. Chris Sale is routinely in the Cy Young mix. I don't know if it's going to be there for those guys in the end, but they're certainly, kind of on the bubble right now in that conversation.
Anthony, I made the argument yesterday that I was hoping that Jorge Posada would last more than 1 year on the ballot. And I think you really make a great point there, is I think in 10 years we're going to look at the catcher's position, or 5 years, whatever, in a different light because of all the things that are put on their plate each and every day.
Yeah, so this is how I view the Hall of Fame in general. I know not everybody views it this way. Some people think that the Hall of Fame should be, Willie Mays and Babe Ruth and Hank Aaron, and that's about it, right? Nobody else gets it. And I'm more of a big Hall guy, but I'm really just a proponent of your era, your generation. In fact, I would even consider the option of, the Hall itself is divvied up by year of induction. It should probably just go in order of era, and take these guys. It would probably paint a better picture of what that era was, what that generation was. I think the best players of their eras should be in the Hall of Fame. I think that's how it should work. I think sometimes we get lost in the weeds, in the woods of comparing this guy to some guy from 1920, and it's difficult to do. There's advanced metrics that can do that now, but I just think you have to take guys in the context of their times. And that's why I come back to that point about starting pitching. Starting pitching has evolved so much in the last, 15, 20 years. The role has changed so much. So I think you have to change the calculus for what a Hall of Fame starter is.
All right, quickly, as we're kind of running out of time here, but do you have other players who you feel are on the right trajectory for Cooperstown?
Keep doing your thing, man. You're on the right trajectory, man.
There it is. I was waiting for that. Yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, Jacob deGrom might even be one of those bubble guys already, having won a couple Cy Youngs already. But Jose Altuve, that conversation just got a lot more complicated this offseason. But
Adios.
it's hard to read that at the moment. But that list there, I think, kind of speaks for itself. Those guys are. I think Garrett Cole is maybe the most interesting name on that list because he's only had two really. He had one great season in Pittsburgh, now two great seasons in Houston. So it's a little presumptuous to start talking about the Hall of Fame. But when you look at Garrett Cole's numbers at this stage of his career versus Max Scherzer at that exact stage of his career in terms of age and innings, it's pretty comparable. So Cole's kind of at that stage right now where Scherzer went to the Nationals and really cemented his legacy. Maybe Cole will do that in New York.
All salient stuff. We appreciate the time. Interesting. I know you'll be watching along with us to find out who's in the class of 2020.
Great job, man, with this interview.
Harold approves of this appearance, Anthony. Great job.
Makes me happy.
Appreciate the conversation. Anthony Castrovince.